You feel lost because you've been drifting, not leading. And there's a cost to that. A quiet one, subtle and slow, but brutal all the same. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It's in the mornings where you wake up and can't explain why you feel heavy. It's in the nights where every fill, even though nothing's exactly wrong. That feeling, that void. It's not some mystery to be solved. It's the natural outcome of living without direction, of handing over the wheel and watching your life be driven by noise, by impulse, by whatever comes easiest. It's a decision made every day you don't choose who you're becoming. Every time you delay, avoid, or numb out from what you know deep down you're meant to do, you'll drift further. It's not the storms that take you under. It's the lack of anchor, the absence of command, the failure to declare war on the mindless pull of comfort and distraction. You weren't born to follow the current. That's not how strength is built. Leadership, especially of the self, doesn't wait for clarity. It creates it. It says, I don't care how foggy it is out there. I'm taking the next step forward. That's the difference. Drifting is easy. You just have to do nothing but leading, especially when you don't feel ready. It takes force, it takes defiance, because the world is loud, and it will offer you 1,000 paths to avoid your own. And here's the painful truthing: the longer you drift, the more you believe you're incapable of leading. That's the trap. You confuse inactivity with inadequacy. But it's not that you're not capable. It's that you haven't practiced the discipline of decision. Every day that passes without you consciously claiming your time, your effort, your values, that's another day of drifting, another inch off course. And eventually, you look around and wonder how you got so far from who you said you wanted to be. But even that, especially that, is a gift. Because pain, when looked at clearly, is feedback. It's your inner self screaming that this can't continue. That something must be seized. It's trying to shake you awake. But it won't beg. It won't shout. It'll just keep making you feel a little more disconnected until one day you either break or break free. You need to deciding, do you want to wake up every day and react to life or command it? Because those are the only two options. You either live with intent, or you live as a consequence of your environment. You either led yourself into fire and forge your mind into steel, or you get melted by the heat of life you never prepared for. Stop waiting to feel ready. You won't. Stop searching for signs. They won't come. Start acting like someone who is done living in confusion, like someone who is sick of floating through days without grip or spine. Because the moment you decide to lead, even if you don't know how yet, something inside you sharpens. You begin to cut away the fog. You see that clarity doesn't precede action. It follows it. You don't need a 5-year plan, you need a direction. You need to ask yourself, what am I willing to suffer for? What am I willing to fight toward, even when no one claps, even when I don't feel like it, even when the outcome is uncertain? That answer, that's your territory. And you fight for it not once, but daily. You win it through discipline, through boundaries, through the brutal honesty of affliction. Don't confuse drifting with rest. Drifting drains you more than effort ever could, because you know, even if quietly, that you're made for more, that there's a leader within you. Not the one with all the answers, but the one willing to take the first step without them. That's real power. That's how you reclaim what you've lost. You feel lost because you've been led by everything but your own mind. Now it's time to reclaim the wheel and choose your direction. Even if your hands shake while you steer, you feel lost because you've traded purpose for pleasure. And at first it doesn't feel like a bad deal. Pleasure is fast. It's easy. It gives you something now. A quick hit, a little escape. That scroll on your phone, the next show, the sugar, the dopamine buzz. It feels like relief. Like you've earned it. like you're just winding. But every time you reach for it without earning it, without first anchoring yourself in something harder, something real, you're not just relaxing. You're weakening the muscle that is life forward. Your purpose. Because purpose isn't shiny. It doesn't give you a rush. It gives you meaning. And that's why it's harder to chase. It's slow. It demands struggle. It requires sacrifice. And that makes it inconvenient when thought is always an option. When your phone offers an escape from boredom. When your fridge offers escape from discomfort. When distraction is cheaper than discipline, you start defaulting to what's easy. And slowly, almost invisibly, the habits of strength get growths by habits of escape. You trade growth for entertainment, discipline for distraction, mission for numbness. And at the end of the day, you can't figure out why you feel directionless, why you feel empty. It's not that your life lacks beauty, it's that it lacks alignment. You've stopped chasing what actually builds you and started chasing what only pacifies you. And here's the truth. Pleasure, when it becomes the goal, becomes the prison. You weren't made to feel good all the time. You were made to become someone worthy of respect, especially your own. And that never happens through comfort. It happens when you delay gratification, when you endure the friction that most people avoid, when you stop looking for peace and start earning pride. The kind of pride that comes from doing what's hard, not because it's fun, but because it's aligned with who you want to become. You don't get that from passive entitlement. You don't get that from avoiding effort. You get that from waking up early when you don't want to, from saying no to the easy option, from keeping your word to yourself, especially when no one's watching. That's purpose. It's not glamorous. It's not loud. It's something you carry like a weight, one that shapes you over time. And don't get me wrong, pleasure isn't the enemy, but when it replaces your purpose, it becomes the trap. Because the moment you start needing pleasure to feel okay, to feel alive, you lose your edge. You stop being the one in control. You become a slave to craving, a servant to ease, and over time, you stop believing you're capable of more. That's the real cost. Not just lost time, but lost identity, lost belief. Think about it. What do you admire in others? Is it how many hours they spend on their couch? How many shows they've binged? How many likes they got? Or is it how disciplined they are? How focused? How clear? Purpose creates presence. It puts you back in your body, in your decisions, in your time. It turns every action into a statement. This is who I am. This is what I'm building. So chill lost. Start there. Start with the question no one wants to ask anymore. What am I doing that's actually moving me forward? Not what feels good. Not what gets likes, but what actually adds strength to my spirit. What challenges me? What forces me to grow? Because the more you live for cheap pleasure, the more you dilute the fire that makes you powerful. And that fire, that's your purpose. It doesn't roar every day. Sometimes it flickers. But if you feed it, not with dopamine, but with discipline, it grows into something unshakable, a force that can carry you through any storm, a direction that holds even when life gets heavy. Purpose isn't loud. It's not flashy, but it's the only thing that makes life feel real. Without it, everything else is noise. Pleasure feels good for a moment, but purpose feels right forever. Stop reaching for what numbs you. Start reaching for what refines you. You want to know why worth out of control. Why you wake up and it already feels like you're behind, like you're drowning in noise, problems, pressure, and expectations. It's not just the world. It's not just your job. It's not just the people around you. The chaos out there, that's just the echo. The real chaos is inside. Because life isn't attacking you, it's reflecting you. What you haven't mastered internally will dominate you externally. If your mind is scattered, everything around you will feel scattered. If your thoughts are undisciplined, your actions will be chaotic. If your emotions run wild, your circumstances will feel like a battlefield. Not because life is unusually brutal, but because your inner world is undirected. That's where the spiral begins. You walk through life expecting clarity, expecting peace, expecting success to show up and make you feel strong and calm. But that's not how it works. Peace doesn't arrive. It's built, and it doesn't start out there. It starts in the one place you're scared to confronting your own mind. Because to sit with your thoughts, really sit with them, without distraction, without escaping, it's hard. It forces you to notice the loops, the lies, the fear, the noise. That's what you're running from, isn't it? The truth that your outer world is simply following orders from the one place you've left undisciplined. Most people live like emotion writers, reacting, blaming, exploding, numbing. They think the solution is to fix everything outside, change jobs, change people, change scenery. But nothing sticks, because the fire inside keeps following them wherever they go. You don't escape a storm by changing location if the storm is in your chest. You have to tame the winds inside before you can walk calmly through the storm outside. That's how control is built. From the inside out. So ask yourself, what's going on inside you right now? Be honest. Are you clear, focused, and cored? Or are you anxious, scattered, reactive? Your environment mirrors your pursuit more than you want to admit. That argument you had, that project you keep procrastinating, that constant stress, it's not just external forces whirling against you. It's your inner lack of alignment, of peace, of direction, making you vulnerable to every distraction, every irritation, every emotional ejac. You don't fix that by organizing your desk or cleaning your schedule. You fix it by mastering your thoughts. And that doesn't happen automatically. It takes practice, daily practice. You've got to become the watcher of your own mind, not its victim. You've got to build the abilities, your thoughts, without being dragged by them. Just because you feel chaos doesn't mean you have to act from it. Just because you feel stress doesn't mean you have to react to it. Stillness doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means you're in control of how you respond to what's happening. It means you've built space between stimulus and reaction. And that space, that's power. That's where self-mastery lives. The world can scream. Life can throw punches. People can test you. But if you're anchored inside, none of it owns you. That's the kind of power you can't fake. You either have it or you don't. And if you don't, starting now, take one moment today, just one, and instead of reacting, pause, breathe, observe, then act. Not out of fear, not out of habit, but out of principle. That's how the chaos starts to fade. Not because the world changed, but because you did. One internal victory at a time. The calmest person in the room isn't the one who talks the most. It's the one who doesn't need to. The one who's already conquered the storm inside. That's who you become when you stop chasing control and start creating it internally. And once you do that, the external cause becomes just another test, not a threat, not a reason to panic, just another mirror reminding you to return to center. Because the world will never stop being loud, but you can learn to be louder on the inside, with clarity, with discipline, with direction. You don't need the world to get easier. You need to get stronger. And that starts with conquering the battlefield within. You keep saying you feel lost, but have you ever stopped to ask, lost from what? See, most people aren't lost because life betrayed them. They're lost because they never picked a direction in the first place. They never defined what victory looks like for them. They never decided what they stand for, what they want, what they're building toward. And so every day feels the same, empty, repetitive, uncertain. It's not that they're off course. It's that they never set a course to begin with. If you don't know what you're aiming at, every distraction feels like a possibility. Every temptation feels like a shortcut. Every setback feels like the end. Because there's no internal compass, no battle plan. So you wake up, and instead of attacking the day, you wait for the day to tell you who to be. You wait for the world to give you some kind of sign. But life doesn't work like that. You don't get clarity by waiting. You get clarity by choosing. You have to define your victory before you fight for it. Otherwise, you're not a warrior, you're a wanderer. And let me tell you, wandering may look poetic in books, but in real life, it leads to frustration, fatigue, and emptiness. It's easy to confuse movement with progress when you haven't defined what arrival looks like. It's easy to feel busy, but still feel behind. That's what happens when you let life push you instead of planting your feet and pushing back. So ask yourself, what does winning look like for you? And I'm not talking about the vague answers, the ones you post online or tell people to sound driven. I'm not talking about, I just want to be happy, or I want success. No, that's not clear. That's not specific. That's not useful. What exactly are you after? What values do you refuse to bend? What standard are you holding yourself to? And what are you building that will outlive your moods, your fears, your doubts? If you don't define that now, life will define it for you. And I promise you, it won't aim high. It'll aim low. It'll settle. It'll convince you that normal is enough, that average is safe, that survival is victory. But deep down, you'll know you're lying to yourself. Because the soul doesn't settle quietly. It screams. That's why you feel restless. That's why you feel numb. That's why you keep trying to fill the void with entertainment, pleasure, noise. Because you haven't anchored yourself in something that matters more than your comfort. You think you need motivation. You don't. You need a mission. You need a reason to bleed that makes the pain worth it. You need to choose a mountain so high it humbles you, scares you, and focuses you. Because until you do, every failure will feel fatal. Every distraction will feel justified. But once you lock in on that clear definition of victory, something changes. The fog lifts. Discipline starts to make sense. Pain becomes part of the process instead of a reason to quit. You stop running from difficulty and start respecting it. That's what direction does. It makes every step count, even the hard ones, even the slow ones, even the ones that feel like you're crawling. But at least you know where you're crawling's to. You may be tired, but you're not confused. You may be delayed, but you're not defeated. That's the kind of power people miss when they refuse to define what matters. They think clarity will come when life gets easier, but clarity creates the strength to handle life when it gets harder. And don't think this is just about goals. Goals are moments. I'm talking about principles. I'm talking about building a code to live by. Something unshakable. Something you don't rewrite every time your emotions shift. That's what gives life structure. That's what gives struggle purpose. That's what turns pain into growth. You need to know what you're fighting for, or you'll fight for anything or nothing. So define it. Write it down. Refine it until it feels undeniable. What do you want your life to mean? What would make you proud to look back on at the end? What kind of person are you becoming every time you suffer, endure, and push through? Without a vision, you will always feel lost. But with one, you can walk through fire and still keep going, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. You wonder why you feel lost, why you feel unstable, uncertain, like you're being tossed around by life with no solid ground beneath you. It's because you're letting emotions run the show. You've handed the keys to your feelings and asked them to drive. And feelings, those momentary storms that shift with sleep, hunger, news, opinions, hormones, they don't care about your future. They only care about comfort right now. They only care about what feels good in this second, not what builds something real in the long run. Think about it. How often have you avoided doing something you knew you needed to do just because you didn't feel like it? You didn't feel motivated. You felt tired. You felt anxious, so you delayed, postponed, distracted yourself, and then came the guilt, the regret, the frustration. But what you didn't see is that it wasn't the task that was hard. It was your VAV relationship to discomfort that was weak. You gave power to emotion instead of being grounded in principle. Principles are the internal laws you write for yourself. They don't shift with mood. They don't care about convenience. They demand consistency, discipline, honor. Principles say, I do what I said I'd do. Not when it's easy, but especially when it's not. Because that's where character is forged. In the moments you don't feel like showing up but do anyway. Not because it feels good, but because it's right. But when you live by emotions, you become unpredictable. You become inconsistent. You tell yourself stories like, I'll do it tomorrow, or I just need to wait until I'm in a better headspace. And what ends up happening? Tomorrow looks exactly like today. You're waiting for a wave of motivation that never comes. You're trying to build a solid life on sand, and every time life pushes you a little, it crumbles. This is why principles matter, because principles aren't reactive. They're decisive. They take the power away from momentary emotions and root your life in something deeper, something that says, I know who I am and I know what I stand for, even when I don't feel like it. That kind of internal clarity is what separates those who drift from those who lead. And no, I'm not saying to ignore your emotions. Emotions are signals, not commands. They can inform you, but they should never govern you. Let them pass through, but don't hand them the throne. You can acknowledge fear and still act with courage. You can feel anger and still choose patience. You can be tired and still move forward. That's power, not the absence of emotion, but the refusal to be ruled by it. You have to decide who's in charge here. The part of you that wants comfort now, or the part of you that's building something eternal. Because one of them is lying to you. One of them is tricking you into smallness, seducing you with ease, convincing you that quitting is self-care and stagnation is peace. But the other part, the one anchored in principle, that part knows the truth that growth hurts, that mastery requires sacrifice, that greatness is earned, not felt. So stop making decisions based on moods. Moods are smoke. They change with weather, with sleep, with what someone said to you this morning. You think your future can be built on that. You think your legacy can be built on that. No, it's only built when you say, no matter how I feel, I will do what I committed to do. No matter how loud my emotions get, I will act in alignment with my values. This is how you stop feeling lost. You replace mood-based action with mission-based action. You stop asking how you feel and start asking what the standard demands. Because feelings can lie, principles can't. Principles don't care about your convenience. They only care about your alignment. And once you live like this, governed by internal law instead of emotional whim, you become dangerous. Not to others, but to your former self. You become someone that fear can't bribe, that excuses can't seduce, that setbacks can't stop, because you're no longer reacting to the world. You're responding from within. That's the shift. That's the anchor. That's how you rise.